Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to the new video. This one's right up my alley. Now this is the kind of stuff I can sink my teeth into. This is about oddity stuff. Stuff that's really out there. I mean, out there. Anyway, this one's about alien stuff. You have to decide whether it's real or whether it's fiction. I don't know. Anyway, let's see how it goes. And if you hit that thumbs up, more people will see this. That's the algorithm that YouTube does. You know the drill. And I appreciate it if you subscribe. You can see more of this stuff. All right? Without further ado, let's light this candle. All right? This video here is an interview with Richard Doty. Now, interesting, Richard Doty was a professional liar. That's right. He worked for the military intelligence. Basically, it was his job with the Air Force intelligence to lie to ufologists and convince them that everything they're seeing is indeed a UFO and has nothing to do with the government. It was in an effort to cover up anything that the government was creating. Didn't want people to, looking out there in outer space, to think that any of that stuff was military, secret military stuff. So he was a professional liar. Now, he's come out recently in interviews basically saying that he was lying. He was lying about his lying. So now the question is he lying about his lying that he was lying? Say that one 5 times fast. Anyway, he's come out now and describing a captive alien that we had with the military for 5 years. And it's a very interesting story, very detailed. And you know what? Since the Roswell incident, I think there could be some truth to it. Maybe it's not all true. Maybe none of it's true. You'll have to let me know. Let me know in the comments. But maybe just some of it's true. Anyway, you decide. Let's listen to Richard Doty here. See what you think.
In January 1947, 2 extraterrestrial spacecrafts crashed over the New Mexican desert. One of the crafts landed near Corona, New Mexico. One live ET was found in that craft. He was taken to Los Alamos laboratories and remained in U.S. intelligence care until he died in 1952. Iba was slightly hurt from the crash. However, Iba quickly recovered. We found out Iba was a mechanic. Eventually, Iba was able to crudely communicate through hand motions and pictures. Iba was placed in isolation. U.S. military personnel didn't know if Iba was radioactive or could spread some type of germs to humans. U.S. doctors also were afraid that the humans could contaminate Iba with germs. Now, here we are in the late 40s, after World War II, a spacecraft crashed. We recovered the crash. Not only did we recover Iba, the one live ET in this crash, we recovered 5 of his comrades who were dead. Now in 1949, a rancher moving his cattle from a lower grazing area to a higher grazing area in western New Mexico near Paloma Peak found another spacecraft, identical to the one that crashed near Corona. This is 2 years later, a very remote area of New Mexico. So this civilization that we found a craft of and the creatures of, unfortunately all the ones that passed away, their bodies were decayed. Iba worked with military linguists in an effort to communicate. Iba was able to speak his language after a doctor was able to transplant a device in his throat. Prior to Iba having an implant in his throat, Iba was learning our language, seeing it, hearing it, interpreting it. He was also learning simple math. simple English, and even some science through pictures, showing him a picture of something and then relating the word that goes along with that picture. A U.S. Army captain was assigned to Iba. I mean, full time. He actually lived with Iba. He wanted to meld with him, so to speak. This captain was a master linguist speaking a number of different languages. Through this interaction with the captain, Iba was able to relate information about himself, his home planet, and his spacecraft. Now, one of the big questions I'm always asked is, what did Iba eat? Well, Iba's spacecraft contained a large quantity of food items for his consumption. Now, Iba eventually exhausted his food supply. But we were able to find out what these food items were, and through manufacturing was able to duplicate them as close as we could based on what we found on Earth. And most of what he ate was plant-based. One of the things he never did eat or couldn't eat was meat. They tried to feed him meat and he couldn't tolerate it. His stomach couldn't tolerate it. Iba was able to eat simple food items such as fruits and vegetables. But the way he ate them shocked the handler and shocked the people around him. Now, everything Iba did was being filmed back in those days on 16 millimeter movie projectors. So everything was being recorded. And so when Iba sat down to eat, he would take the item, such as a piece of fruit, and he would manipulate the item around his mouth. Now, remember, Iba didn't have teeth, anything like teeth. But he placed it in his mouth, and one of the things that few people realized, Iba had two different tongues, one above and one below. The below tongue was primarily used for language, the Iban language. The one above was the one with little suction devices that he would suck the juices out of the food. But ironically, he could dissolve the entire piece of the orange or whatever fruit he had. Now, they would have to cut them in small pieces. Another thing that was really odd, he couldn't rationalize on how to break it open. It would just sit there. But when they cut it and gave him the pieces, he learned this now, how to break them apart. Apparently, there was some reason why he couldn't rationalize that. He was smart, but you gotta remember, he was an extraterrestrial. He wasn't a human. That's something that I thought was quite extraordinary. Now, another thing that we were extremely concerned about were germs, both his germs and our germs. Everything was brought into the captain for that time period, almost 5 years that he lived with Iba. He never strayed out. He never had contact with others, and if he did, he always wore a mask. So they didn't want his germs transmitted to Iba. They tried to put a mask in Iba, but he would never tolerate the mask. He would take it off. So eventually they just gave up on the mask. One of the things that Iba did do was drink water. Iba eventually told us water was universal throughout space. Every planet that he had been to, inhabitable planet, his planet had water. So now we learned that H2O was prominent throughout the universe. Iba's body had a unique ability of extracting fluids from the food. So he didn't need a whole lot of water to compensate the makeup of his body. Scientists found that Iba's anatomy was entirely different. Iba had one organ that worked as a heart and lung. Iba's digestive system was simple, with just one stomach and one organ that eliminated waste. Iba had small glands on his hands, arm, and legs. The glands would enlarge at certain times. Iba measured 4 feet, 3 inches tall, and weighed 60 pounds. Iba's weight never varied. Iba was found in a crash site wearing a tight-fitting one-piece suit. The suit was all he needed to maintain the correct body heat. The suit was made of an elastic material that retained warmth and kept out cold. Scientists could not determine the material of the suit. Now here we got an extraterrestrial that wore this suit, one suit, didn't have any other clothes in the spacecraft, and that suit protected him from the heat, and protected him from the cold. During experiments at Los Alamos, he was subjected to cold and heat. His body temperature never changed. Iba had fluid in his body similar to blood. However, scientists could not identify the substance of the blood. Iba lasted longer than he probably would have if his comrades had lived, because I'm sure the amount of rations he had for food would have been consumed by them too. Iba was always calm, kind, and very considerate. He was never excited, rude, or mean. Iba liked to touch people. His culture of holding and touching a person was a social norm for them. As he later explained to us, hugging and touching was a form of communications, social communications to the Ibans. Iba was very docile. Even when scientists were poking and examining him, he seemed to understand why. He was the alien. He was the one that the humans were going to find information from, experiment with. He accepted that. He had a very high intelligence level. Now, I think it was difficult for Los Alamos, even being a national laboratory with very smart scientists, it was difficult for them to measure his intelligence quotient or his IQ. Now, he was only in captivity for 5 years. During that time period, he was able to learn our language. The problem he had was communicating, saying our words. He was saying them the best way he could, and it took some time for people to understand what he was saying, similar to somebody that had a thick accent from some other country and then trying to speak some other language. Now, during his life on Earth, Iba developed several medical conditions. His body seemed to heal those problems, except for a rash. Several different medicines were tried, and eventually the rash went away. What Iba had on his spacecraft was a medical kit. It took us some time to determine what it was, and it took some time actually for Iba to explain what he needed to get out of the spacecraft. But eventually we were able to bring his medical kit to him. Some very strange looking equipment, some strange looking tubes with medicine or some sort of healing materials. Iba assisted U.S. military intelligence in understanding the items from a spacecraft. Iba assisted us in creating a communications link between his planet and Earth. We were able to link a system using a communications device found in the Iban craft between Earth and the Iban's home planet. In September 1952, Iba developed a serious medical condition. Military and civilian doctors tried in vain to treat the problem. Everything that they could possibly do, they tried. He was withering away. They didn't understand why. Iba seemed to know why, but he couldn't relate everything to us or his handlers. One of the extraordinary things that we learned was that Iba wasn't afraid to die. He actually tried to explain to us, and I don't think we realized at the time what he was telling us, but eventually we figured it out. It was a new plateau for them. Life was one level and death was another level. So he wasn't afraid to die. The U.S. Air Force captain was heartbroken and suffered emotional distress for years after. Now, what happened to all this information that we gathered from Iba? It was locked up. We didn't want the public to know that we had an ET in captivity. And I say captivity, they wouldn't allow him to leave. I don't believe there's anything ever written or any information I ever was told about him trying to escape. I think he realized his situation. He realized his eventual fate, and he just cooperated during the time period that he was in our custody. But before he died, he was able to set up a communications link between Earth and his planet. And eventually that led to the Iban crafts coming back here and picking up Iba and his comrades and taking them back to their home planet.
Well, what do you think? Pretty wild, huh? You gotta admit, I don't think the government's been exactly forthright in filling us in what's going on with regards to aliens, what's out there, what's in here. I don't know. What's that saying, the old saying? You can't believe or believe half of what you read, nothing that you hear. Nowadays, with the deception that's out there, what is it? Believe nothing that you read and nothing that you hear and now nothing that you see. I don't know. I got an open mind. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's not. Let me know. Let me know what you think. Meanwhile, hit that thumbs up. Slam that thumbs up and subscribe. Okay? And I'll see you again. All right. I'm signing off. See ya.